Hey, it's Joe Glines from the Automator, and this is an extract from a hero call where we were talking through this really interesting sort of bug we had in our script, and it has to do with getting files and folders and lists of them, and it was a very interesting aha that all of us kind of had. We hadn't really thought it through of the ramifications of the code in AutoHotkey. So enjoy the video. Really consider joining the Hero Club. It's a great club, and this is just another example of one of the things you get to learn live while we're sitting there. We have 3 hours of calls a week that you can attend. And of course, they're all recorded so you can watch them at some other time. Please like the video if you learned something. It really helps us out. Cheers. So this was a really interesting one. During last week's call, during trying to run the recently modified files, I was having some weird issues come up. And there were actually several that we can talk about. The first one was that the getting a list of files, but what it took a little while to figure out what was going on. But Isaias finally realized some of the things that, well, actually there were 2 things, but Geek Dude's not here to answer part of one of them. One of them was his folder was named, what is it?
Yeah,
JSON.hk or something?
the ASK. It is a folder, but it has a an extension in the end, and that was kind of like that was well. Usually, that's the interesting thing. You can name your folders however you want. You can put dots in them, right? You can put periods in them, and that's not a problem. Now, as soon as you name it like a file, you have to account for certain things in AutoHotkey, and we didn't know about that for other reasons. And what I wanted to do, and Irfan and I, we were working on that. He helped me out, like looking at the code, and then it was just kind of like magic. It just at some point we were like, hold on, but that's a folder. And that's what actually kind of like got tipped us. And as soon as we realized that was a folder, then we were able to kind of like fix the problem. So I wanted to kind of like showcase that real quick and show you what that looks like and what to take into account when you're doing that. So basically, let me share my screen here for a second. Oh. All right, so the main issue is we were first looping over some files. So loop files, in this case, I'm gonna do the desktop, and we're gonna say, hey, loop through everything. And one of the things that we have been working with very often is, let me do this in VS Code. That way we can have the correct coloring.
No, you cite. Let's break your computer.
All right, so one of the things that we do when we're doing the loop files is that we have the options at the end that tell us what type of files you want to kind of look over. And it's very common to have FDR, so files, directories, and being it recursive. And that's very important here. The recursiveness of it is what we needed because we needed to go through all the files in our given directory. Holy crap, I'm starting to hate Copilot. I'm going to disable it. I think I did. I don't know why I come up again. So here's the thing. We looped through the files and we were splitting the path, split path, and that's going to be a loop file full path here. And yeah, we want the file name. We want the directory. So we want the directory. Oh, so yeah, I need to put the ampersand here. And we want the name, no extension at this point.
Do me a favor, run the script first, because just so people can understand what it is we're trying to do, I think it'll help them understand the bigger picture.
Right. So output debug a loop file full path. All right, cool. So if I run this, let me save it as loop test.
I meant the actual recently modified file.
Okay. Let's open that up as well.
Because for me, I always have a hard time taking in information if I don't understand what our goal is.
Right. So this is listing a lot of files that were modified recently based on the number of days that we set up in here. So files that were modified within the last 7 days, basically, is what it's doing.
AHK extension.
And that have an AHK extension. Exactly. Now, once it finds the files that we want, then we list them here with certain things. But The key point here being that you could double click on a file and it would try to run the file, or we could try to open the location of that file as well. If I remember right, you have a way to kind of like open the folder, there it is, of where that thing is located at, whatever it is. So basically,
So my main point is, so for each thing, we need both the entire path and the folder path. Like we need
right.
both of those things separate.
Yeah.
So anyway,
So
sorry.
we have the location of the thing, the name of the thing, and we can actually kind of like merge those together later. But the point being, I need to be able to open either the file or run it or do other things or open the folder where it's at, right? Very good. Now, while we're doing this, basically our code is literally just looping through files, right? Just like that. It's looping through all the files recursively. And we're grabbing the name and we are kind of like splitting the path into different sections. Now, the problem here, you will see there's a lot of files in this folder because there's kind of like some things in there. This guy right here, at a glance, what do you think it is? Is it a file or is it a folder? And that's the biggest question here. Well, let me answer that for you. That one is a folder. So how do I know that? Well, if I do file exist and I put this guy here and I look at what it does, right? So let me look for if this does not contain MCL. I want to ignore it for now. What that does is that it will tell me that whether the file exists or not, but when it comes back to us, it will tell us that it's a directory. And how do I know that? Well, because when we run this, you get these two little characters here. Those characters tells you that it's archive and that this D here means that it's a directory. So basically, even though that looks like a file, that is not actually a file. And here's the problem. One of the things that we do on, oh shoot, I closed it. But basically one of the things that we do on the recently modified files, I don't know if you saw that, is that when I click on a file, it kind of like fills out this section here with a preview of the file, all right? So we're gonna see that in a bit, but to do that, I have to read the file, right? But what happens when you try to use a file read on that? Well, that's going to come up with a very strange error, all right?
Just to clarify, I know Isaias knows this, but line 6, you could be doing above line 1, right?
Sure.
Line 6 is you'd want to use the A loop file path instead of having it hard coded because
right. In this case, I'm just trying to make sure they understand. I'm referring to that one file specifically, but yeah, you're right. And basically that's what we do, right? So we just go ahead and do file read on the file that you just clicked or whatever. And the point is, I'm just referring to this guy, which is a folder. But if you try to run this, you will get this weird error because it says that the access is denied. It doesn't tell you about why the access is denied. It just tells you access denied. So we go through the normal hoops. Okay, is that file like, does it have read-only access? Is it locked for certain users and not others? No. So funny thing, if you look at the original file, what you're going to find is that you do have CJSON source lib folder. You have the mcl.hk folder, and inside that, you have the mcl.hk file. Those are two different things, all right? So when I was looking at this, I was like, okay, but that MCL AHK file, I right click on it and I look at the options or the properties. It's not read only. It's not weird. It's not for the system. I never thought about the folder because I'm not looking at a folder. When I looked at the path, I saw that it was a file, right? That's what the problem started. Second of all, you're noticing that I'm actually kind of like splitting this up. Well, if you grab the file name in here, guess what you're going to get? The file name here is going to get you that. Is going to act as a file. It looks like a file, not only to me visually, it looks like a file to file path. File path is saying, you know what, this is the file name, right? It is not a directory, it is the file name. Well, I guess that happens with any folder, like the last part of the thing becomes the file name. I'm not sure. But interestingly, if you look at name no extension, which is part of what I think is weird, now you get MCL. The extension, so to speak, got stripped from it. So that means like it is looking at it as a file, not a folder. So that's the key point here. Split path has no way to identify whether it's a file or a folder or anything. It just looks at the string and splits it into parts. And then it says, okay, so this part should be the folder, this part should be the file name, this part should be the file name with no extension, and so on. So split path didn't give us any errors because it is valid what we're doing. The name no extension came up with a file, so we were displaying that, and actually the file name was coming up and we were displaying that on our list. And now that I think it's running, I can show you. So we have the file name. You see this file name here? That's exactly the file loop path file name that we got. We put it there. And basically, as I mentioned before, if you click on it, you can read the file and look at what it looks like, right? So that's what we were trying to do. But if you try to do the exact same thing with a folder, it is going to give you this file read errors. So how did we fix this? There are many ways that you can go about this. One of them is, hey, what if this is a directory? If when I do the file exist, if it has a D in it, it means that it's a directory. Let me ignore it. And then I told Irfan, well, but yeah, we can do that. But how about we completely remove directories from the loop? It's easier. That way I don't have to change my code at all. I just remove the D from this particular set of options. And now we're looping through all the files in this area. And Joe was asking, oh, hold on, but wouldn't that actually not recurse into the folders because it's not looking at the folders? No, if you use the recursive here, it will go through the folders, but it will only list the files. So you can still get all the files that were there. And we can easily test this by doing this. So if I do that, let's just count how many there are, right? So I just say, let's just output a index so I can see the last number. The last number is 7 here. If I only do the files in that location, but if I put the R here, that would recurse into the folders and I should get more than 7 files, which is exactly what we get. We get 459 files. So I know that it's recursing, even though I excluded the directories from it. So in the end, our fix was simply removing the D character from these options. It took care of everything else because now the folders are not being listed. And now split path is going to give me the correct thing for files. And then the file read is going to work because file read cannot open a folder to read. Basically, that was the issue that we were having. So hopefully that makes sense.
You just had too many parameters, basically.
Basically, we were looking at everything when we didn't need to.
Well, but to clarify, that's what I want to say is that, can you share your screen? Just leave that up there, because what's weird to me was I was thinking the thing on the right has to do with what you're looping over, but it's not. It's what is getting returned to you.
Yes,
that
is correct.
Like that was a whole like, wow, I never really thought that through, and like that changes everything. Of
so, if you only wanted directories, you leave the D and take the F away, basically.
Yes, that way when I list this out, I should only get directories here and no files. But that's exactly what Joe is saying. Like when you put these options here, it's not about what you're looping over. Like, oh, don't loop over files. That's not what it's doing.
Right.
It will loop over all the files and all the folders,
It's
but
returning
it will only return the
what
ones
you're
that
looking
you specify
for.
there.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's
That was a big aha
basically
for me because
yeah.
I'm like, man,
Yes. Now look at that. You see, now we get this directory here listed. It looks like a file. Like for everything, it looks like a file. It's just like one more file. There you go. And what is this file doing there? No. That's a directory, right? And that's where this whole thing it was really, and I think the reason why it was a little bit tricky to debug was because the error was so arcane. It was just like access denied. Yeah, but
well,
like
it was a combination of the two, right? Because the ones that we were looking at looked like files. If it didn't look like a file, we would have spotted it, I think, really quickly. But it was the both of them, and we're like, what is going on here?